Actually, in my presentation, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about actually building your own extension for Joomla, and in particular, the area of not only just building the extension, but actually publishing it out to the community. One of the things that we had found over the last year is we've actually written probably 6 or 7, at least, different extensions for various different purposes. But the vast majority of the original ones were for specific customers, for specific purpose. And really, once we had got them developed and tested, we'd use them with the 1 or 2 clients we were doing them for, and that was kind of it. And so as we started creating the new one, one called the Axe to Web Site Manager, this was the first one we were actually publishing out to the community, and had to start thinking about all of the other issues, and to be honest, didn't really realize even what those issues were as we were developing them, and what we'd have to do to actually get it out there and to be able to support it. One of the big things with this extension that I think we're learning, I'm going to say somewhat the hard way in terms of the amount of code we've written, is that with a lot of the early extensions we wrote, we did it with pretty much just straight PHP with minimal integration into the Joomla API. And they worked. You could install, uninstall them, and everything worked well. What we are realizing the more that we've gotten involved and the deeper we've gotten into working with Joomla is, especially with the way the API is being written for 1.5, is it actually adds a lot more work to yourself to not use their API. Because one of the things is I've been digging in and working with the core team on the API is especially in the areas of things like form validation, and if you're asking for input and different things like that, a lot of the default Joomla APIs take care of the trying to stop out the SQL injections and all of those things you normally have to spend your time figuring out and thinking about. A lot of that's already been done for you. So it actually enables you to write your code quite a bit faster. So one of the things I definitely would recommend if you're planning on writing extensions, at least maybe say more than one, or if you're writing a relatively complex one, or if it's, again, for the enterprise space where security is a big deal and you're really worried about that, definitely would recommend spending the time up front to learn the API and use that right from the beginning. Because what you'll find, I think, is that the whole process will be a lot easier for you. The extension, once we had built it, we got ready to launch. It was in the beginning of August, actually. We were planning to launch. We had pretty much all of the original code developed. And one of the things we didn't know is we had no idea what to expect after we put it up on the extension site, what kind of traffic we would get, how we would get it out to the community. I sort of come from the traditional business world where, once you've created software or created any product, the real work gets out there in trying to market it and get people to even know about it. And so I wasn't really sure in an open source community like this, do you need to do the same thing? And so we weren't really sure what to do. Finally, once we were ready to launch, and it was actually a pretty late night on a Wednesday night, we were finishing up about midnight, and we had probably, I would say, we thought about another hour and a half's worth of work left to just get the installer to work. And we were running around scrambling, and we thought, well, let's just go ahead and submit it to the extensions list. It's going to take a while for them to approve it, for it to get up on the site, for anyone to see it. And kind of that was a bad move. We learned a tough lesson with that, because we literally went up probably a few minutes before midnight, saw our first download at like 12:03. And it didn't stop. There was one at 12:05, 12:08. I was calling Andy at 12:08 going, okay, we can't go to sleep. We have to get it up now. We're starting to get a lot of downloads right now because we're getting picked up by people in Europe. So that was one of the things we really hadn't thought about was, although we knew that Joomla is really international and most of Joomla's use is outside of the US, I don't think it really had connected to us that as we were getting tired and late at midnight, it's 8 a.m., people are getting online in other places, and you got to be ready right off the bat. So one thing definitely would recommend is when you do launch it on the extension site, definitely be ready right out of the gate for stuff happening. The second thing also that we learned from doing some experimentation is one of the best ways to get initial traffic is from the little list at the top that's called new extensions. I didn't know how much that was actually really used, but a large percentage of our traffic happened directly from that. So when people, I think, and I know I do it, I take an RSS feed of all the new extensions, and when I see ones that are interesting, I go check them out. But in order to maximize your benefit of that, try to put it up after 9 o'clock at night on the East Coast of the US. As strange as that sounds, I think the reason, and I haven't been able to confirm this, is I think that site is hosted on the East Coast of the US, the Joomla.org site. And because of it, the server's set to East Coast time. So it flips over at 9 p.m. California time. Because of that, you then get 24 full hours on the new extensions list before it starts moving down. Because if you go on at later points in the day, you have less time before it'll go deeper down the list. So again, just a little thing that sort of help keep you up sooner, because right off the bat, when you're new, that's some of the best time to start getting visibility and starting to get traffic and getting people to want to know more about your extension. As I said, when we launched, it's been just about a month, and we've reached about 750 actually registered users and about 1,000 downloads in the first month. One of the things that we were most surprised at was also starting to see where we were starting to get pickups beyond just the Joomla.org site. Literally about a week ago, we were going and traffic had sort of tailed off from the extension site, and all of a sudden we got this huge spike and no idea where from, couldn't find it. We hadn't done anything new on the extension site. And so finally had to go to Google Analytics and to try to figure out where all our referrals are coming from. Found out we were actually picked up on a site called joomlafrance.org, and we were on the front page of Joomla France, and we were getting lots and lots of traffic directly from that. So we had to start using the Google translation service to try to figure out what they were saying about us, whether it was good, whether it was bad, what the feedback was. And surprisingly, it works pretty well. It's an interesting translations they do at times, but you definitely get the gist of what people are saying. So that was the second place we got picked up. Noticed also in that list got picked up from a couple places in Germany. One place actually also in Denmark, I think, also had us on there. So we're starting to see it kind of just all over the world. And that sort of led to another thing that we learned now that we didn't actually put in when we launched it, and we're now kind of making sure we do that in a release candidate that's going to be out probably in another week or so, is making sure it's internationalized right from the beginning. One of the things we definitely recommend when you build an extension, and most extensions don't do this, and it's not really something that's overly difficult, it's just something you kind of have to think about from the beginning, is taking anything that you're going to actually echo or print to the screen that people are going to read and move that to sort of a separate file that's easily updatable and makes it sort of modular. Because if you do that, you can actually very easily put other languages in on that file and very easily make it done for other languages. Because one of the things that we've also gotten is people offering to do the translation services for us. So again, one of the things that's also very different than what I was used to in the corporate world is instead of having to think about paying for that process of having to get it translated, we had people in the community very, very willing to say, you know, are you going to internationalize it? If you do, let us know. We'd love to help you. And our first one was literally Turkish. Of all languages, that was the first place they wanted to translate it. But we've had ones from Turkey, from France, from a couple of other places. So I would definitely recommend that even if you're doing a relatively small or relatively simple component, if you can at all possible, try to set it up to be internationalized. Because I think you'll see a lot more traffic, just a lot more use around it. And the other thing that I think that really helps for is, what I've really seen out there is there's two kinds of extensions that go out. There's the one kind, which is you write something, it's for a certain use, and you just sort of throw it out to the community. You're not planning to support it. You're not planning to do anything with it. It's just sort of free code. Here it is, but you're going to have to use it however you want to. But if you want to actually use it as part of a business model or in some way to develop a community around it, you want to make sure that you actually work with that extension and really work with the community who will be very vocal and really will be very supportive in the beginning. One of the things that I was learning, responding to a lot of people, was you got really, really good response from people, and people really responded if you just responded to their emails. And one of the things that I was really pleasantly surprised about, because we did have a lot of bumps in the first day or two, was how friendly people were with issues. Again, sort of a very different world than the corporate world. People didn't come sending you emails complaining and being very upset with your changes. They would usually come with, here's a suggestion, here's how you might want to fix it, or could you just publish the problem you're having and maybe someone else in the community can figure it out for you? And we've had a few people actually trying to solve some problems for us. And it's actually really helped to start sort of creating a community around it and getting people interested. Because I think one of the things people respond to best, and I know for our own use it's been true as well, is if you feel like the community around an extension is active, you're much, much more willing to use it and you're much more excited about using it. To be honest, I think one of the reasons probably we're all here about Joomla, and Todd even said it himself, one of the big reasons, I would say probably one of the primary reasons that they looked at it is the community. Because if you're looking at open source, really the community is the entire project. The software is good, but if you don't have the community, there's really nothing going on there. So that was one of the things new, but I think really got reinforced when we walked through that, that process and got a lot of the feedback. The last one also was the importance of things like videos for demonstrations. A lot of feedback and a lot of people watching. I'm shocked at the amount of traffic. Literally the day we launched, we were racing around doing screen captures of the extension and just recording it using a software program called Camtasia, and then just converted it into a YouTube video, put them up on YouTube, and then just did a link to them right off the site, used a Joomla extension to embed them directly into our site. And we were curious to see how people would really respond to them. And we were shocked that it's almost a one-to-one. For the number of people we see coming to the site, almost a one-to-one actually watches the videos. And when I look at the click path that people are using on our site, the number one place everybody goes first is your features page. And within our features is where we have our videos. It's almost 100% linkage from there to them clicking through and watching the videos. A lot of things you don't see on a lot of extensions. And I think it's actually, and it's even more critical if you're writing sort of a larger or a more complex application. But I think it's really still valuable, even if you're doing a relatively simple module. Just to show how it's working and what it's meant for makes it a lot easier for people to kind of get a concept of what they need to do with it and how to get it set up. The one other thing that I would say around this that we haven't gotten direct feedback on, but one of the things that I believe is also really important is try to also make your extension very, not even so much developer friendly, but designer friendly. And what I mean by that is in terms of trying to keep your design and your style separate of the development. A lot of times we see when we're working with extensions, those things get completely combined. It makes it very difficult for people who want to customize, or if they want to go in and hack it up and make changes, it makes it much, much more difficult, and they have to have a lot more skill to do it. So if you can try to keep those things separate, which I know is going to be a much easier thing to do in 1.5, and they're going to kind of force you to a degree to do that in 1.5. But if you can, as you're writing the extension, that also I think will serve you really, really well with the community. With that, that's just kind of a rundown on kind of what we've learned so far. I think we're going to learn a lot more in the next few months. But wanted to just see if there were any questions just about extensions in general. Yeah.
What's your business model around your extension?
Ours is actually kind of a unique one. What we're doing is we've actually made the extension open source to keep it GPL friendly and within the way the community is designed, but are actually tying in what I sort of call like a client-server approach, where we're going to integrate into it the ability for things like a backup service. So not only do you get the base services of things like managing menus and doing those things from the front end, but having like one clicks straight through to backing up your site and taking that backup off-site, and ultimately not only backing it up, but moving it to a different hosting provider. So those are the kinds of services we're going to layer on top of the core base extension. So we're really kind of interested in experimenting with how that business model is going to work, because I know that's a big one in the community. People are trying to figure out what the right business models are and what'll work. And I think definitely in some of the future meetings, we'll definitely want to have some conversations kind of about that and different ideas for people who are trying to run different businesses around Joomla.
What was the extension that you guys just released?
It's called AxeToWeb Site Manager, or ASM for short. Yeah.
What about 1.5? What's your approach to 1.5 compatibility?
In terms of 1.5 compatibility, we've been a little bit conservative as well, and doing. Our focus has been we're planning to do our sort of 1.0 version of our extension in the 1.0 platform, which is where we are now. Planning to stay there, finish that up. Probably sort of seeing the trajectory that Joomla's on. Probably in October, we're going to look to actually be 1.5 compatible, but in legacy mode. And then pretty quickly beyond that is actually make it native to 1.5. And then after that, the plan is all future enhancements we make will all be 1.5 only, most likely.
How much work is that? How much work will that be to move from 1.0 to 1.5? Is that trivial, or is that just refactoring?
So the question is in terms of difficulty in making the transition from 1.0 to 1.5. The short part of that answer is we don't know, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be large. It's definitely not a complete refactoring. It's switching over to doing 1.5 legacy mode, I think will be relatively quick. I don't foresee there's going to be a lot involved there because it's staying still pretty similar to what you're doing in 1.0 now. Converting it over to 1.5 is going to be more a matter of, I think, not refactoring it so much as moving code around, putting things in different locations, and more than anything, enhancing a lot of sections. A lot of the things that we knew right out of the bat, that 1.0 is sort of constrained in what you can do in terms of layout and things like that. That's so much more flexible in 1.5 that it's just going to open up a lot of possibilities that will probably lead to more changes to the code, things like that. But to get it actually in its core format, probably not a lot. Gods are telling us to stop. And although with the one probably exception on our side is we have a part of our extension that deals with being able to move modules around on the page from the front end. And it's sort of a kind of a drag and drop approach of moving them. That one is probably, if anything, that will involve a lot of recoding, that would be the one. Mainly because we had to customize part of the core Joomla code. And being that code is completely changed, we're going to have to really dive in to see where this stuff now resides and how do we tie in with it. So it may be a lot easier, or maybe just be very different. Okay.
What's your approach to checking compatibility with other extensions?
Great question. Something we've been dealing with quite a bit. The question was dealing with compatibility with other extensions. There really isn't a great way to do it other than literally install your extension with other extensions and see if it works. And literally what we've been doing, and part of it's actually been through the community, we've been finding out as people send to us, oh, it's not working, we can't figure out why. We get onto their site, we find an extension that we haven't tested before and can replicate it pretty quickly. Most of the time, at least so far, I should say, the problems have had as much to do with really two things. Dealing with PHP sessions has been the most common because VirtueMart's been an issue with that, and JavaScript. And actually with some of the new Rocket Themes templates has been a challenge, mainly just because Rocket Themes, a lot of the new ones are adding more and more functionality into the template. There's just more and more things there that could potentially compete. So those have been the two biggest things that we've had to figure out workarounds to and to deal with. Luckily, so far, most of the time when we've had compatibility issues like that, it hasn't been a hard thing to fix. It's just a matter of kind of looking and experimenting. And once you find it, it's usually like one line of code takes care of it. And also, that's one thing that I think will get a lot easier in 1.5 as well, just because they're integrating MooTools directly in. So for those of you familiar with JavaScript, there's a framework called MooTools that allows you to do like a lot of animation, move, drag and drop, move things around, making sliders and different things. Because that'll be built directly into Joomla, everybody who's building extensions can leverage that already in Joomla. That's one of the biggest areas for, and so if you are actually using an extension and running into problems with it, you don't necessarily have to really look at the code, but one of the things you can look for to see if it's a problem is try to figure out, does the extension you installed use any kind of JavaScript framework? And the typical ones are going to be MooTools, jQuery, what was the prototype? I would say those are probably the three biggest ones, because if you can find a couple of different extensions, if they both are including that, it'll give you a good sense of where the problem is. And it'd be a lot easier to get someone, if you can't fix it, getting it to someone who very quickly can make the change for you. Because literally, usually the only change that's involved is putting in commenting out one of the sites that's including the JavaScript framework. And as soon as that's taken out, you're good to go. So it's, again, a quick fix, but that's a very, very common reason for incompatibility. Yeah, it's, I mean, the best way you're going to find is either on the website of the extensions that you installed, because usually they'll say somewhere on the site what they've included and if they've included something that is JavaScript. And again, if you're looking for names like those 3 or 4 names, that's going to be a good sign. If they have a forum, either on their site or on the Joomla.org site, you can do just some quick searches for those names and see if that's included. So usually that's your best bet to just do a kind of a quick way to figure it out without having to look at any code at all. Yeah.
Another one I might point out for other people, like specifically for that, is there's an extension for Firefox called Firebug, which makes it so much easier for figuring out everything, from the CSS to JavaScript, name-based collisions, all that type of stuff. It's a huge time saver.
Yes, and yeah, let me just repeat that for this. This suggestion was also, if you're looking for ways to look for this stuff, there's an extension for for Firefox called Firebug that can definitely speed up your process, and I would completely concur. We use it every day, just for pretty much just about anything related to your site. It's a great tool. Yes.
How much do you use for connecting with your customers, with the people who download the community and your extension? How much are you using the Joomla forums versus your own forums, and what's your basic approach?
In terms of how we communicate with customers, for us, we pretty much do everything on our site. In fact, we actually are using Dockman, and we actually have them come and register at our site and then download directly from our site. Mainly just because it gives us more control over the extensions. It's easier to use, easier to do analysis of what people have been doing, communicate with them in the future if there's been changes, things like that. Easier also to integrate into the site. One of the things that I've found with the Joomla code site is it's not overly user-friendly. And so if you're not a programmer and you're not used to those kinds of sites, it can be a little intimidating. So we wanted to kind of put it on our site. And then we also use something called Fireboard for the forums on our site. And we've been using that and checking with that. And it's been pretty full-featured and does everything we need. Well, great. If there are no more questions, then I think we'll end the presentation part and move into kind of having an open roundtable for any questions that people have and any issues that they have.